Two of the arguments are quite ancient. As long as human beings have been debating theories of human nature, these two arguments have been around. The third one is a much more modern argument developed in the 19th century. First argument, I'll actually do a different numbering system here, use letters at this point, is to say that dualism has a certain problem, and that is the problem of dependence, as it's called. I'll just give you the assertion first. And the problem of dependence against dualism is to say that all psychological phenomena can be shown to depend on underlying physical phenomena. Right? So there is no psychological phenomena that has a life of its own or an independent existence, a separable existence, as dualism in principle claims. So we can show, for example, that perceptual experiences depend on certain types of perceptual apparatus in the brain, memory phenomena, emotional phenomena, intellectual phenomena, and thought phenomena, and so on, all of which are psychological, can't exist but for the existence and proper functioning of underlying physical phenomena. So let me give you kind of a homey example here. Suppose you or I were to drink 3 beers in quick succession. What would happen to me is I would, at least now, I would very quickly be close to drunk. My body would stop functioning quite appropriately. I would lose my coordination. My speech would start to be slurred, and so on. So there would be all of those phenomena. I would get very tired, and you just have to put me to bed fairly quickly here. Now, that is simply a matter of taking beer, right, which is a chemical compound, and putting it into my body, which is another chemical compound. And so we have a mixture of chemicals that are going on. And we would expect that if you have non-standard chemicals introduced into another chemical system, you're going to get some non-standard physical behavior. So that part is perfectly understandable. But the problem here is for dualism. If dualism is true, then what we call my mind or my thoughts or my soul or my spirit or my consciousness, it's a different kind of thing. It's not a chemical phenomenon, and so it should not, for its proper functioning, to be dependent upon underlying chemical states. And that does not seem to be true to the phenomenon of drunkenness or getting tipsy, because what seems to happen when we get drunk is that not only does our body start to become dysfunctional, our minds start to become dysfunctional, our thoughts become dysfunctional, our emotions start to become dysfunctional, and so forth. So we think we're incredibly intelligent, we think we're very witty, we think we are very attractive to members of the opposite sex, and so forth, but in fact our minds are just not functioning appropriately. And the question is, why is this happening, right? How is it then that we are losing our minds, right, so to speak, simply because of physical phenomena? In that case, the proper functioning of the psychological depends upon the proper functioning of the underlying physical in this particular case. And we can also do this through pathology. Physicians and other researchers who will study people who have suffered various sorts of traumas and have had various kinds of brain damage. They will lose a certain emotional capacity, or they will lose their long-term memories, or they'll lose the ability to make certain kinds of perceptual discriminations or think certain categories of thoughts. And in most cases, what we can then do is find damage to various parts of the brain that has occurred as a result of the trauma, and so therefore that psychological capacity is either impaired or just lost outright. And it seems that if dualism is true, the psychological should be remaining intact, right? Because the claim of dualism is that it is radically independent of the underlying physical phenomena. So the problem of dependence has been a traditional problem for dualism, and that has then led many investigators to believe that the psychological is a manifestation of, or in some tighter way, part of a natural phenomenon, part of an organic, natural human being. A related variation of this problem, but I'm going to separate it out, is traditionally called the problem of interaction. And it's another kind of independence issue here. And the claim made in this case here is that on dualistic grounds, the way dualists, at least strong forms of dualism, understand the theory and present the theory, interaction cannot be explained. Right? That dualism as a theory simply can't explain some of the most important phenomena that we are supposed to be explaining here. Now, the idea of interaction here is that it does seem to be the case that physical phenomena, things that happen to my body, interact with the psychological and cause certain psychological things to occur. So if you tell me, for example, various happy news, then I think certain happy thoughts, I have certain happy experiences emotionally, right, and so forth. But as certain sound waves then that were propagating, impinging upon my physical ear, all that physical stuff caused certain psychological states to occur. And the interaction also goes the other way. I can have certain thoughts, which are just thoughts, purely hypothetical or purely theoretical, but then at a certain point I make a decision to act on the basis of those, and those thoughts then interact with my body and cause my body to do certain sorts of things. So the problem of interaction is that in the first place, what happens is that the physical does have certain causal influence on the psychological, and the psychological does have certain causal influence on the physical. So these interactions do go on in both directions here. Can dualism adequately explain this phenomenon here if the physical and the psychological are two different types of things? All right, so here's a homey example. I weigh 190 pounds, and right now I'm thinking that in about 5 seconds I'm going to jump up into the air. Now, that's just a hypothetical thought. Just thinking I should jump up in the air, and so now I'm going to jump up in the air. So there, I jump up into the air. Now here's the question. Clearly I had a thought, and the thought caused me to jump up in the air, but on dualistic grounds, how is that possible? How is it the case that if my thought, whatever's going on in my spirit, right, or in my mind, if that's a non-physical phenomenon, how can that cause 190 pounds, which is a substantial amount of stuff, to elevate itself off the ground? And it seems, at least on hardcore dualist accounts, to be an impossible phenomenon.